For a long time, bringing up alien life was almost asking to be mocked. Anyone who raised that topic was seen as a daydreamer or a conspiracy fan. But while public opinion laughed, science quietly shifted sides. Today, astronomers no longer treat that question as fantasy, but as a serious problem, with numbers, statistics, and extremely expensive instruments pointed at the sky. The big turning point came when we stopped staring only at stars and started counting planets, thousands of them, in dozens of systems, all different, some surprisingly Earth-like. From then on, the question stopped being, does life out there exist? And turned into something more awkward. Is it reasonable to think it worked only here? Math began to corner skepticism. In this transition between myth and evidence, a seemingly modest character appears, an exoplanet called K2-18b. It did not start with hype. It was not a headline star at first. But observation after observation, it climbed through the ranks of the most promising suspects in the universe. And when a planet reaches that level, you can be sure the story is about to gain a new chapter. For many years, talking about alien life was a synonym for jokes or crazy theories. It sounded like a subject reserved for movies, tabloid covers, and late-night conversations. Slowly, though, science stopped laughing and started measuring. Telescopes, probes, and powerful computers turned that old "what if" into data, graphics, and even careful calculations. The joke slowly began to look serious. Now, when an astronomer discusses life beyond Earth, they are not simply guessing, but relying on statistics. We know there are billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, and a staggering number of planets orbiting them. It is like walking into a mall with millions of shops and claiming that only one sells water. Logic and math begin working together in that argument. That is what makes this moment so special. The search moved out of a purely philosophical field and stepped straight into the age of observable evidence. Instead of asking just, does life out there exist? Scientists now ask, where are the strongest hints? And in that shift, as the myth starts to smell like reality, a few planets stop being dots of light and become serious suspects, like K2-18b. When K2-18b was found in 2015, it joined the list like so many other catalogued exoplanets. Odd name, cold code, just one more distant speck for the astronomers. But as with certain people we only notice later, this planet slowly began to stand out. Each fresh observation added a tiny detail that made researchers think, hold on, there's something unusual going on here. First came the location. K2-18b sits in the so-called habitable zone of its star, a region where temperatures may allow liquid water. Then its size and mass, bigger and heavier than Earth, circling a red dwarf in only 33 days. It is not a perfect twin of our world, but similar enough to spark real curiosity. It stopped being just another one and became one of the most intriguing. Over time, K2-18b moved beyond spreadsheets and started to show up in slides, scientific papers, discussions, and conference talks. It slowly became a small celebrity in astronomy meetings. When a planet reaches that status, it means a lot of serious minds are betting on it. That rising attention was what opened the door for more powerful tools, like the James Webb telescope, to step fully into the story. The James Webb does not see life like in the movies, spotting cities or spaceships. It does something far more subtle. It reads light. When a planet passes in front of its star, some of that starlight crosses the atmosphere and reaches the telescope slightly flavored by the gases there. It is like smelling a dish from the hallway. You do not see the food, but you can guess what is cooking by the scent. This method, known as transit spectroscopy, allows scientists to split that light into different wavelengths and identify the chemical fingerprint of each gas. On Earth, we use a similar idea in labs to learn what a material is made of, just on a smaller scale. Webb performs this at absurd distances, with sensitivity so high that a tiny shift in the spectrum already becomes an important clue for research. When that technique was applied to K218b, traces of gases appeared that here on Earth usually show up only when life is active, especially microorganisms. That does not mean the telescope saw a fish or a plant, but that it sniffed something that strongly resembles a kitchen where life is busy cooking. And if a planet shows that kind of aroma from so far away, it deserves much closer attention. Lately, scientists have been talking a lot about ocean worlds, planets covered by vast seas of liquid water with hydrogen-rich atmospheres. These environments could be ideal homes for tiny organisms, like the bacteria and algae we already know on Earth. K218b seems to fit nicely into that category, which makes everything about it even more exciting for astrobiology and planetary science. Still, there is a huge gap between a clue and a proof. When we mention a biosignature, we are talking about hints, gases, chemical patterns, and mixtures that, on Earth, almost always appear alongside life. It is like finding footprints on sand. You do not see the animal, but every sign suggests it passed there. You cannot deliver a final verdict from that alone, yet it is too strong to simply ignore. That is why scientists are so cautious when they make announcements. They avoid saying "we found life" and choose phrases like "possible biosignatures detected." It might sound like wordplay, but it is really about responsibility. If the scientific community makes a big mistake here, it could lose credibility for decades. On the other hand, if future data confirms what we see, this may become our first strong sign of a truly living world. What lies ahead is a mix of technological progress and psychological shock. On one side, new telescopes like the Extremely Large Telescope promise to reveal extremely fine details on distant planets, perhaps even light and temperature shifts that resemble cities or large structures. On the other, human society is not really sure how it would react to a solid confirmation of life beyond Earth. It is not just a question of science, it is about identity. Religion, philosophy, and politics would all need to adjust to the idea that we are not alone. There are already debating contact protocols, who speaks for humanity, what should be sent, and what should be avoided. Meanwhile, most people carry on with daily life, barely aware that these choices could shape the future of our entire species. Deep down, one simple and uncomfortable question remains. Are we ready to discover that we have cosmic neighbors? And more than that, are we ready to accept that on the scale of the universe we might not be the main characters, but just supporting ones? As planets like K218b step into the spotlight, that possibility stops being only a distant theory and starts knocking very gently at our door. If in the past the idea of alien life lived mostly in fantasy, now it rests more and more on plots of data, light spectra, and technical reports. K218b is just one example of how the boundary between imagination and evidence is getting thinner. The point is no longer whether science is searching, but whether we as a civilization are truly prepared to handle what it might uncover at any moment. In the end, This search is not only about them, it is about us, about how we define what it means to be human, to be unique, to have a place in the cosmos. Confirming that we have neighbors out there could become the greatest philosophical revolution in our story, even bigger than learning that Earth orbits the Sun. And this conversation may reach your life much sooner than you expect. If this topic stirs something in you, do not let it fade into simple curiosity. Use it to think differently, to question more, to dive deeper into real science. Share this content with people who love this subject and comment on what you believe would change first if life on another planet were confirmed. And make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell and stay close because this story is far from over. It is probably just beginning.